Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. In this video, I want to answer a question that a student had in the Facebook group, and it's related to a quiz question. So I'm going to go in and I just want to kind of read it to you because it's pretty straightforward. The answer is pretty straightforward. It can appear to be confusing. And the reason this is really important is that for many of you, you're using the ACE materials and they have practice exams and study questions, and some of them can appear to be like they're purposely trying to confuse you. And the answer to that is no, they're not. ACE is an NCCA accredited organization. They are being watched and looked at, and there's oversight. So please don't think that they're trying to trick you or anything with their questions. They are not. So I want to help clarify why that is not the case. You will see, for the most part, when I get through this video with you, the answers are what they are. I'm not saying all their questions are perfect. They're not. Some of them are more confusing than others, but some questions, like in this case, I'm going to go over it with you in a second. Sometimes it's confusing because your understanding or knowledge of the material may not be where it needs to be. And I'm going to explain that to you. So hopefully there's the confusion is kind of mediated and you can now look at the question a little bit better. And I'm going to keep the video on as I go over this with you, but I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the question as I'm videotaping this. It was from practice test 4, and I'm just looking at the post right now, and it's from the personal trainer study program, and it says, watch the video to answer the question. My assumption is that the video question was on the squat, and it says, which is the primary muscle being worked in this exercise? It's obviously the squat, and I don't know anything other than the fact that from this question, it's clear that they're showing a person doing a squat, and then when the question is answered, and obviously it says that this individual got the question wrong because it looks like she put rectus femoris in the answer, right? So which is the primary muscle being worked in this exercise? The 4 answers are vastus lateralis, gluteus maximus, rectus femoris, biceps femoris. Okay, easy enough as I look at this, easy enough to understand what the actual answer is. And that's why I want to make sure you understand that the question is not trying to confuse you. The question is asking a very basic element related to kinesiology and biomechanics. Okay, that's what this question is asking. Do you truly understand the nature of the muscular system at the hip and the knee? Okay, and it's showing in green, it says chapter 9, anatomical systems, skeletal system, muscle function, table 9.6, major muscles that act at the hip. And by the way, if I was to go into chapter 9 and I can look at the major joints in the body, there is charts and everything you need to know about that particular area. So it says table 6, major muscles that act at the hip, right? Which tells me that perhaps the answer to the question is going to relate to muscles at the hip. I don't know. I mean, I didn't watch this particular video, but it really is not relevant, to be honest with you, because the answers already tell you what the proper answer is going to be because it's multiple choice. So don't act of the hip, domain 1. The gluteus maximus is the primary muscle, the agonist in a squat exercise. Now, here is where, and let me put myself back here so I can watch me doing the video. So in that statement alone, we have confused a ton of people out there. And the individual that posted this, and I appreciate her posting this in the ACE Facebook group, because it's I've seen it before, by the way, and I've had a lot of folks confused about this. And she actually says, I thought, like most people, I thought that the agonist muscle, or the primary muscle we're working when we do a squat, is the quads. And the answer to that is yes, sure it is. The problem here is that there is some confusion because of the kinesiology. And when we talk about kinesiology, human movement, then of course biomechanics, and we add the neuromuscular system into it, we get confused with what muscle is the agonist or what muscle is the antagonist, because technically there is not a single agonist in the squat. Now, at the hip joint, because the squat is a basically a two-joint, multi-joint exercise, but only two joints really provide the overall force and power of those particular agonists to produce the movement, right? So there is, right, in the squat, there is the movement of the hip, right? So hip extension on the way down, and hip flexion on the way down, hip extension on the way up, knee flexion on the way down, knee flexion on the way up. By the way, just as a little aside, that's why we call like running or something like this triple flexion, triple extension, right? Because there's flexion and extension occurring at multiple joints. Triple means down at the ankle, by the way. But the point is that at the hip joint, what is the agonist? Are you training the quads when you do a squat? Duh. Yeah. But remember, you're also putting maximal stress and effort. It's one of the reasons why I very seldom ever did gluteal work with clients. I didn't have to, because the squat and lunges provided all the gluteal work that an individual would ever need, for the most part, for the average client. And so at the hip, what is the primary mover that causes concentric motion, or the movement up? Right? Concentric meaning that the muscle is shortening to produce movement. In the squat, that's going to be the up motion of the exercise. What muscle at the hip is responsible for extending that muscle to move the body up? What muscle is it? The primary extensor muscle, which is the gluteus maximus. Okay. Now that's not up for discussion. We're not saying, well, maybe it's the hamstring. No, it's the gluteus maximus. The gluteus maximus is the primary extender of the hip. It is. It does a lot of other things, of course, but its primary function is to extend the hip when the hip has been moved into a flexed position. Period. That's what its function is. Are there other muscles that help? Yes. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. So at the hip joint, when you're doing a squat, the agonist, or the muscle responsible, right? That's what the agonist is. It is the muscle responsible for primary movement at that joint. This is where the confusion comes in. Well, what about the quads? Well, you're absolutely right. At the knee joint, right? We're not talking about the hip anymore, but at the knee joint, what is the primary extensor of the knee? The primary extensor. Please do not say, again, this is where your knowledge base comes in. Please don't say that it's the vastus lateralis, because it's not. Because the vastus lateralis does not work on its own. Please don't say that it's the vastus medialis or the vastus intermedius or the rectus femoris, because that's incorrect. The rectus femoris is not the agonist. Why? Because there are 4 agonists that extend the knee. The rectus femoris does not work on its own. Now, if you think that is being deceptive on the part of ACE, no, actually not. It's not being deceptive. Understanding the functionality of multiple muscles that produce single movements, such as the vastus group, lateralis, intermedius, and medialis, all 3 of those guys work. Are there subtle differences in load dispersion based on position? Of course, but that is so subtle. It's just not worth the conversation. Okay, the question is asking, do you know the main agonists at these 2 joints? And what the answer is, well, either the answer must have the main agonist at the hip as one possible answer, or it must have the main agonists with an S at the knee joint. In other words, if the four possible answers to the question had the gluteus maximus, that's correct, because it is the primary agonist in the squat. It's at the hip, but it is the primary agonist for sure. And in those three other responses, you do not see the word quadriceps, then by default, you must pick the gluteus maximus. Irrespective of what the other answers are, there's only two possibilities. From a purely kinesiological, biomechanical perspective, there's only two possibilities when we're talking about the squat. It's either, I'm going to choose one, or if I'm going to have to choose one or the other, it's either the gluteus maximus, not even the gluteal group, because the gluteus minimus and medius, they have some involvement. It's the gluteus maximus. That is your prime mover. Or at the knee joint, what is the agonist at the knee joint? What did I say? It's not the vastus lateralis. It is not the vastus medialis. It is not the vastus intermedius. Those are all collectively the agonist for knee extension, to include the rectus femoris. Any answer that has one of the quadricep muscles as the answer cannot be the correct response. Why? Because no quad muscle works on its own as the agonist. It's the same thing with the hamstring group. Okay, the hamstring group is three muscles, folks. To simply say that the biceps femoris is the primary flexor at the knee is incorrect. Why? Because the biceps femoris simply cannot function and does not function without the semimembranosus, semitendinosus muscles, all three actively contracting. Once again, depending on the position, depending on the environmental condition that the body is positioned in, yes, there are subtle differences in neuromuscular activity for all three of those. It's functionally designed for that. I hope that makes sense. So when answering a question, you've got to be sure you really understand the physiology, the anatomy, right? And in this case, kinesiological functions of muscles. The quadricep group is called the quadricep group for a very specific reason, because all four of those muscles act in concert at differing levels of neuromuscular activity to produce a single basic motion at the knee, and it's called knee extension. For the individual that posted this, again, thank you for posting it, because it's a great point of contention that people have. You're correct. The quads are the muscle group. When I do legs, when I train legs, for instance, and I want to train my quads, it's squats. But what we also understand is that the squat has as one of its primary muscular activity, muscular functions, is the gluteus maximus. In fact, when done correctly, right, getting depth, right, because that really, as you lengthen a muscle, you put more and more stress and tension, potentially tension, on that particular muscle. So the glutes become a very profound component to that particular movement itself. So I hope that's helpful. The question had four responses. The other thing to consider is that those four responses were the vastus lateralis, gluteus maximus, rectus femoris, and the biceps femoris. Well, right off the bat, by elimination, the biceps femoris obviously is not the answer. So you're left with three. And again, I hope that it's understood that there are two main joints working, and extension at the knee and extension at the hip have two primary muscle or muscle groups. The answer must be specific. It's either going to be the gluteus maximus, which was the possible answer, or the collective term known as the quadriceps itself. Any answer that was an individual quad muscle cannot be the answer because any individual quad muscle is not the agonist. It's part of a group. And that's why, again, that's more than likely, that's why the answer was the answer. I hope this was helpful. If it was confusing, let me know in the comments and I'll try to, do another video to make it sound even more understandable. But if it was helpful, by the way, and I'm hoping it is, then please write the word understand in the comment section. Remember to subscribe to our channel if you have not done so, and let us know if there are other topics that we can help you with in this particular setting. Have a great week. We will see you next week. Bye.